He laughed at her on live TV. The man she cooked for, loved, and believed in mocked her in front of millions. But what he didn't know was that the same woman he humiliated would walk into the same studio the next day. Not as his wife, but as his replacement. The bright lights of the Lego studio felt hotter than usual. Amara Chukwuma sat with her hands folded tightly on her lap, her heart pounding as cameras turned toward her and her husband Tobchi, the man everyone adored. He was all charm and confidence, the kind of man who made people laugh easily. Amara had always supported him, helped him prepare, reminded him of his lines, and stayed up late perfecting his recipes. But today she was just the wife, sitting quietly in his shadow. The host grinned, looking between them. "We heard your wife is the real chef behind those amazing recipes, Tobchi. Is that true?" The audience chuckled, waiting for his playful response. But instead of smiling, Tobchi threw his head back and laughed in a way that made the air in the room turn sharp. "Her cooking," he scoffed loudly. "Please, if Amara ever cooked for the public, half of Lagos would call in sick." The crowd erupted into laughter. Some clapped, others howled. Even the host covered his mouth, trying not to laugh. But Amara just sat there frozen. Her lips trembled as she forced a weak smile for the cameras, pretending to laugh along. The joke echoed through the studio, but in her heart, it felt like a slap. She could feel the heat rise to her cheeks. The laughter around her blurred into noise. The man she loved, the man she had believed in more than herself, had just made her the punchline to entertain strangers. Her eyes glistened under the studio lights, and she quickly looked away, hoping no one would see the tears forming as the show went on. Tobchi kept smiling and bragging about his restaurant, about his recipes, about how much he worked for success. And Amara just sat beside him, nodding politely, her heart breaking quietly behind the cameras. When the recording ended, he didn't even notice her silence. "That went great," he said, grinning as they left the stage. But Amara said nothing. In her chest something shifted, something small but strong. It wasn't just pain. It was the beginning of an awakening. For the first time, she looked at her husband not with love, but with disbelief. The man she had built up had just torn her down on live television for the world to laugh at. And deep inside, she knew she would never be the same again. Long before the bright lights and television fame, Tobchi was just a young man with big dreams and empty pockets. And beside him, always beside him, was Amara. She was the quiet force behind every success he had. The gentle hands that stirred the pots. The careful mind that balanced flavors until perfection. In their small kitchen, it was Amara who experimented, who stayed up late tasting, adjusting, and writing down recipes in her worn notebook while Tobchi practiced his charm in the mirror. When he first started cooking for small events, it was Amara who planned the menus, prepared the sauces, and whispered last-minute reminders. He would stand proudly in front of the guests, taking every compliment, while she washed dishes in the back, listening to the laughter and applause that should have been shared with her. But she didn't complain. She believed that love meant support, and she wanted him to shine, even if it meant dimming her own light. As time passed, Tobchi's fame grew. He started appearing on radio, then local TV. Every time he came home, Amara would ask shyly, "Did you mention our recipes?" And every time he would wave her off. "Our recipes? No one cares about that, Amara. People like personality. They like confidence. You wouldn't understand. You're too quiet for the camera." His words cut her each time, small wounds she hid behind soft smiles. But when he wasn't home, she would turn on the TV, watch his shows, and whisper corrections. "You added too much pepper," she'd say softly, almost smiling, still proud even when unseen. After the live show where he mocked her, she returned home alone. The kitchen that once felt warm now seemed cold and cruel. She looked at the counter, the same counter where she'd once stood beside him, sharing laughter and dreams. Now it felt like a stranger's space. Slowly, she began to clean the dishes, wiping every surface as tears fell silently. Each plate she washed carried a memory of love, sacrifice, and unspoken gratitude that had never been returned. Her hands trembled as she put away the utensils. It wasn't just about food anymore. It was about respect. That night, under the dim light of their kitchen, Amara realized the truth. Topchi hadn't just stolen her recipes. He had stolen her voice. The morning sun slipped gently through the curtains, but for Amara it didn't bring light. It only revealed the truth she could no longer hide from. The house was quiet except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. On the dining table lay last night's dishes, the empty glasses from Tabechi's celebration dinner after his TV appearance. He had gone to bed smiling, proud of his performance. But Amara hadn't slept a minute. She sat up all night, staring at the ceiling, her heart breaking with every replay of his cruel laughter echoing in her head. By sunrise, she had made her decision. She took out a small brown suitcase from under the bed, the same one she used years ago when they moved into their first apartment together. She folded her few clothes neatly, slipped her mother's old cookbook inside, and placed her wedding ring on top, the final piece of her past life. Her eyes were swollen but steady. As she zipped the bag, Topchi finally stirred. He looked at her with mild confusion, his tone sharp as if annoyed by the noise. The morning sun slipped gently through the curtains, but for Amara, it didn't bring light. It only revealed the truth she could no longer hide from. The house was quiet except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. On the dining table lay last night's dishes, the empty glasses from Tabechi's celebration dinner after his TV appearance. He had gone to bed smiling, proud of his performance. But Amara hadn't slept a minute. She sat up all night, staring at the ceiling, her heart breaking with every replay of his cruel laughter echoing in her head. By sunrise, she had made her decision. She took out a small brown suitcase from under the bed, the same one she used years ago when they moved into their first apartment together. She folded her few clothes neatly, slipped her mother's old cookbook inside, and placed her wedding ring on top, the final piece of her past life. Her eyes were swollen but steady. As she zipped the bag, Topchi finally stirred. He looked at her with mild confusion, his tone sharp as if annoyed by the noise. "Where are you going?" he asked, not out of concern, but disbelief that she would dare move without his permission. Amara paused, her voice calm and quiet, the kind of quiet that holds strength. "Somewhere I can remember who I was before I became your shadow," she said softly. He blinked, half laughing, thinking she was being dramatic. "Oh, come on, Amara. Don't start this emotional nonsense. You know I was joking." But she didn't reply. She placed the apron she always wore, the one stained with years of love, patience, and hard work, neatly on the counter beside the ring. Then she took one last look around the house that had once been filled with dreams, now filled with silence. And she walked out. Outside, the air felt different, freer, lighter. She hadn't realized how heavy the walls of that house had become until she stepped beyond them. As she waited for a cab, her phone buzzed. It was a message from her best friend Zara Okoye. "Amara, you need to see this." Zara had posted a short clip from the TV show, the moment Topchi mocked her cooking. Within hours it had spread like wildfire. People were furious, defending her, praising her grace and dignity. The world that once ignored her was now finally seeing her. And as she rode away from the life she once knew, Amara didn't cry. She smiled faintly. Maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of her own story. By the next morning, Amara's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Notifications flooded in, hundreds, then thousands. Her friend Zara called, nearly shouting through the phone. "Amara, you're everywhere. Everyone's talking about you." Confused, Amara opened her social media and froze. The video clip of Topchi mocking her on live TV had exploded across the internet. Millions of people had watched it, and the comments section was on fire. How can a man humiliate his wife like that on camera? She's the real chef behind his success. Everyone knows it. This woman deserves her own show. Within hours, food bloggers, influencers, and even local chefs began to speak up. People dug through old interviews, finding clips where Topchi had mentioned his wife's help in the kitchen. That was all the proof the internet needed. The story turned into a movement. Soon, women all across Nigeria started recording videos of themselves cooking at home, using the caption #Amara's Kitchen. Some made jokes like, "Let's see if Topchi can handle this stew." Others shared heartfelt messages. We see you, Amara. Your silence speaks louder than his laughter. Even celebrities joined in, praising her calmness and dignity. The hashtag trended across platforms: Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. News outlets began covering the story, calling it the humiliation that backfired. People were no longer laughing at her. They were defending her, celebrating her. Through it all, Amara said nothing. She didn't post a single word or respond to any messages. She spent her days quietly helping at a small restaurant near her neighborhood, chopping vegetables and keeping to herself. Yet deep inside, something was changing. Every ping of a new notification, every message of support, was like a hand reaching out to lift her spirit again. One evening, she sat in her tiny kitchen with a bowl of stew, scrolling through videos of women cooking her recipes, the same dishes Topchi had mocked. They were laughing, smiling, and saying, "This is delicious." For the first time in weeks, Amara laughed too. A soft, genuine laugh. She didn't need to defend herself. The world had done it for her. As she looked at the trending hashtag glowing on her phone screen, she whispered to herself, "Maybe I didn't lose everything after all. Maybe this is just the beginning." One quiet afternoon, while Amara was washing dishes in her small kitchen, her phone rang. The number was unfamiliar. She almost ignored it, thinking it was another journalist or curious stranger wanting a quote about the viral video. But something told her to answer. A calm, professional voice spoke on the other end. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Chukwuma. This is Adiz from Lagos Food Network." Amara froze. Lagos Food Network, the same channel that aired her husband's show, the same studio where her humiliation had been broadcast to millions. Her heart began to race. "We've seen what's happening online," Adiz continued warmly. "The world has fallen in love with your story, your strength, your dignity. We were wondering if you'd be open to hosting your own cooking series." Amara blinked, unsure if she'd heard correctly. "Hosting? Me?" she said quietly. "I'm not a celebrity. I've never even spoken on camera." There was a short pause, then Adiz replied, "Exactly, Amara. You're not a celebrity. You're real. People are tired of polished faces pretending to be perfect. They want someone genuine. Someone who cooks from the heart. That's you." Amara's knees almost gave out. She sat down slowly, staring at the floor, the dish towel still in her hand. Her voice trembled as she said, "But my husband works with your network." Adiz chuckled gently. "Not anymore. His contract isn't being renewed. The audience spoke and they want you." The words hit her like a wave. For months, she had lived in silence, cleaning up the emotional mess of a broken marriage. But now, the same stage that had once been used to humiliate her was being offered to her. Not as a guest, not as someone's wife, but as the host. When she hung up the call, she sat still for a long time. The afternoon light streamed through the kitchen window, landing on the small notebook where she had once written her dream. Amara's Kitchen, a show that teaches cooking from the heart. Tears filled her eyes, but this time they weren't from pain. She whispered to herself, "Maybe this is my time. Maybe this is what all that heartbreak was preparing me for." And in that small sunlit kitchen, something inside her reignited, the fire she thought she had lost forever. The morning of her first shoot, Amara woke up before sunrise. Her hands trembled slightly as she buttoned her crisp white blouse. The air outside smelled of new beginnings and nerves. As her cab pulled up to the Lagos Food Network studio, her heart thumped loudly, not out of fear, but out of disbelief. This was the same building where she had once been humiliated on live TV. But today she was walking in through a different door, the one marked Host Entrance. When she stepped inside, the air was buzzing with quiet excitement. Cameramen, makeup artists, and studio assistants paused to look at her. Some whispered softly, "That's her, that's Amara." Others gave her encouraging smiles. A few clapped gently, the kind of applause that comes from respect, not pity. The director approached her with a reassuring grin. "Welcome home, Amara. Are you ready?" She took a deep breath and smiled. "I've been ready my whole life," she said. They led her to the set, bright lights, stainless steel counters, and neatly arranged ingredients. It looked almost identical to the set where her husband once cooked. But the energy was completely different. There was no arrogance, no pretense, no loud laughter meant to hide insecurity. Just warmth. As the red light on the main camera flickered on, signaling recording started, Amara gripped the counter gently and looked straight into the lens. Her voice was calm, steady, but full of power. "For every woman who has ever been told she's not enough," she began, "this kitchen is yours." Her words hung in the air, soft yet electric. The crew members went silent. You could almost feel the goosebumps travel through the room. Then she began to cook. Her movements were slow, graceful, confident, not for show but for love. She told stories while stirring, laughed softly as she remembered her grandmother's recipes, and invited viewers to cook with their hearts, not just their hands. When the episode aired that night, it exploded across the internet. Comments flooded in from women around the world. "She cooks like she's healing. This isn't just food. This is strength." By morning, #Amara's Kitchen was trending again. Not as a story of humiliation but of rebirth. And for the first time, the same studio that once broke her had become the place she rebuilt herself. While Amara's light was rising, Tabechi's world began to collapse piece by piece. The same fans who once cheered for him now scrolled past his posts without a glance. The sponsors who used to flood his inbox with deals quietly withdrew their offers. Food brands deleted his photos. TV networks that once fought to feature him stopped calling. His restaurant, once full of laughter and flashing cameras, began to empty. The tables sat silent, the scent of burnt pride hanging heavier than the food he served. At first, Topchi laughed it off. "It's just a phase," he told his staff. "They'll move on." But the days stretched into weeks, and the silence grew louder. Negative comments flooded his pages, people calling him arrogant, heartless, a man who destroyed a good woman. The same audience that had built him up was now tearing him down with their words. When the first sponsor officially ended their contract, he felt the hit. Then came the second, then the third. By the end of the month, more than half his partners had walked away. The kitchen he once ruled now echoed with emptiness. Even his employees whispered when he passed. Desperate, Topchi took his phone, set up his camera and pressed record. His face looked tired, his voice shaking slightly as he spoke. "I never meant to hurt her," he said, forcing a smile. "I was joking, it was all just jokes." But the world didn't buy it. The comments came fast and sharp. "A joke? You broke her on live TV. Now you're sorry because she's shining. You should have respected her when she was beside you." No amount of apology could fix what his pride had broken. Every time he posted, people replied with clips of Amara's cooking show, her words echoing like a mirror held up to his downfall. "For every woman who's ever been told she's not enough." His restaurant bookings dropped to almost nothing. The lights in his studio went dim. He scrolled through his feed, watching Amara's videos hit millions of views while his own struggled to reach 1,000. The world had made its choice, and it was clear. The hero wasn't the man who mocked his wife. It was the woman who rose from his shadow and taught everyone what real strength looked like. 2 months passed like a dream Amara never thought she'd live. Her show was thriving, her recipes were on every screen, and her laughter, the one she had lost for years, finally came back. The studio felt alive again, filled with warmth, music, and the aroma of her mother's old spices. But one quiet afternoon, just before shooting a new episode, the air shifted. The door opened slowly, and there he was. Topchi. He looked nothing like the man she once knew. No fancy suit, no camera-ready smile. His shoulders sagged, his face was pale, and his once confident eyes held something new: regret. The crew froze. The room went still. Even the hum of the lights seemed to fade. Amara stood near the counter, a bowl of dough in her hands, her heart steady. Topchi took a hesitant step forward. "Amara," he began, his voice softer than she remembered. "You're doing amazing. Everyone's talking about you." He paused, searching her face for warmth. "Maybe we could co-host an episode? You know, for old time's sake." For a moment, the studio was silent. The crew glanced at Amara, waiting. She wiped her hands slowly, looked at him, really looked at him, and smiled faintly. Her voice was calm, controlled, almost gentle. Tobchi, she said. I think the world has already had enough of seeing us together. This kitchen, it belongs to me now. Her words weren't loud, but they carried the weight of every tear she'd once cried, every insult she'd swallowed, every moment she doubted her worth. The crew nodded quietly, understanding the power in her voice. The director made a small gesture, and 2 security guards stepped forward. Tobchi didn't fight. He lowered his head, gave a small nod and walked out. His footsteps echoed through the hallway, slow, heavy, final. As the door closed behind him, Amara exhaled softly. There was no anger left in her, only peace. She turned back to the camera, smiled and said to the crew, "All right, let's start again." It wasn't just a new episode. It was her full circle, a moment of quiet justice. No shouting, no revenge. Just grace, power, and the calm victory of a woman who finally owned her own story. The grand ballroom glittered with gold lights, filled with the finest chefs, journalists, and TV stars across Africa. Every table shimmered with crystal glasses and elegant dishes, but all eyes were fixed on the stage, waiting to see who would take home the biggest award of the night. Amara sat quietly in her seat, her hands trembling just a little. Her heart raced as the announcer's voice echoed across the hall. And the winner for Best TV Cooking Series of the Year is #Amara's Kitchen. For a moment she froze. The crowd erupted into cheers, people stood up, clapping, shouting her name. Tears filled her eyes as she slowly rose and walked to the stage. Each step felt like a lifetime, a journey from humiliation to triumph, from being laughed at to being celebrated. When she reached the microphone, she took a deep breath, the applause still thundering around her. The lights were bright, almost blinding, but this time she didn't hide from them. She looked out at the crowd, faces of women, students, and even little girls watching her with shining eyes. Her voice was soft but steady. "I used to cook for love," she began, her words flowing from somewhere deep within her. "Then I cooked to prove myself. But now, I cook to remind every woman watching, you are not a background story. You are the main dish." The audience roared. Cameras flashed like stars in the night sky. People chanted her name, her show, her message. It was more than applause, it was validation, it was healing. As she lifted her award, her gaze drifted to the audience. In the far corner, almost hidden from view, sat Tobchi. His once confident smile was gone. He looked smaller, somehow humbled. When their eyes met, he didn't look away. Instead, he gave a small nod, part regret, part respect. Amara nodded back, not with anger but with peace. The orchestra began to play softly as she stepped down from the stage, her trophy gleaming under the lights. The cameras followed her every move, capturing the image that would soon flood every screen. Amara Chukwuma, the woman who rose from mockery to mastery, from silence to spotlight. The sun rose softly over Lagos, its golden light spilling across the glass windows of a brand new building. A large sign shimmered proudly at the entrance. The Heart of Home Institute, founded by Amara Chukwuma. Inside, the scent of fresh bread and spices filled the air. Laughter and chatter echoed through the wide halls as young women in aprons practiced their first recipes, their faces glowing with excitement and pride. Amara walked through the kitchen, her steps calm and confident. She paused beside a young girl struggling to knead dough and smiled warmly. "Don't rush it," she said gently. "Cooking isn't just about food. It's about love, patience, and knowing your worth." The girl smiled back, her eyes shining with admiration. The school wasn't just a place to learn recipes. It was a home for broken dreams, a second chance for girls who had been told they weren't enough. Many of them came from small towns, carrying pain and hope in equal measure. And Amara made sure every one of them left knowing that their voice, their story, and their skills mattered. Later that afternoon, during the grand opening, a crowd of journalists filled the courtyard. Cameras flashed as Amara stood before a large ribbon, scissors in hand. A reporter raised his microphone and asked, "Mrs. Chukwuma, if you could say one thing to the man who mocked you on live television, what would it be?" Amara paused for a moment, a gentle smile curving her lips. The crowd grew quiet, waiting. "I'd say thank you," she said softly, "because his laughter pushed me into my destiny." Her words carried across the crowd like music, calm, strong, and filled with grace. Applause broke out, and some of the girls watching wiped away tears.